Hello and welcome to Is This England, a show where we talk about old England games and ask just how England was this.
This week, we're going to be delving into uncharted territory, the Steve McClaren era. Handpicked by Sven to take England to the next level, we take a look at the highs and lows of McClaren's tenure as England manager.
Okay, this is uncharted territory. I thought we'd seen it all and I thought we'd done the lot. But apparently
Steve McClaren's never going to stop, is he?
Well, don't know spoilers. Somebody might make him stop.
He may be forced to stop through his own actions at some point here.
Yeah, one of the must be one of the few eras left completely untouched. As we approach sort of 50 episodes in, we've done a good job to avoid this, considering it was in our lifetime as well.
Yeah, I think it is really just because it was like kind of like no other period we'd ever seen as England fans. Like I probably started watching football in about 2002. I was a bit late to it, really, for myself. So it was kind of like, okay, I've only ever known Sven as England manager up to this point. So it's like, oh, we get a change, because as being a Man United fan, I'd only known Alex Ferguson as well. So this was the first time I was like, oh, I'm invested in I'm invested in a managerial change and what it may bring, and it brought Steve.
A man who knows Sven and Sir Alex very well.
Very well, yes.
He's very trusted by them for reasons that we'll get into, I suppose. Just a quick note before we jump into everything to like and subscribe, 5-star review, say yes, pump your fists and say yes. Do anything you want to do, basically, that makes us look better. That's for the listeners. That's not you.
Yeah, well, I can't really do much for either of us, if I'm honest. We've got what we're given.
Yeah, so the year is 2006, and we're going to look in depth at the Steve McClaren era. We'll explain a little bit more shortly as to how that is going to unfold from a podcast perspective. But we always start with a time capsule to give a sense of belonging and place. Would you like to go first, Nick, or would you like me to go first, Nick?
You go first, because it's definitely, I know less about yours, so I'm interested to hear about it.
Okay. Mine is Saxondale, a BBC comedy series that first aired on June the 19th, 2006. It centres around a character played and written by Steve Coogan called Tommy Saxondale. Tommy's a former rock and roll roadie with anger issues who now owns a pest control business. Tommy's never been quite able to fully accept that the 70s are now well and truly over, despite his advancing years and less than rock and roll lifestyle as we see him in the series. So before I go any further with that, have you seen it? Have you seen an episode? Have you heard of it?
Literally never heard of it. I thought when you said this is what you were doing, I thought this was one of his characters from the 90s. I'm thinking of the guy in the blue jacket that you just stand up as a character of.
Yeah. I can't remember his name there. The Mancunian guy who slags off students all the time, right?
That sounds about accurate. Yeah, he looks like he'd do that anyway. Yeah, I've literally never heard of this. There's a really good cast in it. Ruth Jones is in it as well.
Yeah, Paul Carf is who you're thinking of, the character. Yeah, it's a good cast and a good show, Saxondale. I really like it. I don't know what to say, because it doesn't quite hit the highs of Partridge, but that doesn't make it bad at all. I think it really has suffered for those comparisons. But it aired 4 years after the second series of I'm Alan Partridge, with Coogan seemingly on a sort of a semi-permanent break from the character. What I'd say I like about this show is, obviously, I love all of the references to stuff like, he can't get over the fact that the bands such as Deep Purple and that sort of era just aren't the biggest selling artists in the world anymore. You do meet, it's such a well-observed character. You meet so many people sort of like that, and it's all very much just like, yeah, I'll stick it to the man, buddy, But meanwhile, he lives in a a new build estate, and he needs he needs to put his feet up and have a cup of tea at night and stuff like that because he's getting on a bit. Yeah, really, really underrated, I would say. Steve Coogan actually admitted in his autobiography that he preferred Saxondale to Partridge due to the character's depth and fundamental likability. He's definitely much more likable than Partridge. I mean, he's not perfect. It wouldn't be a funny show if he wasn't. But yeah, it's a bit more. It's just a bit nicer than Partridge. I've got a little quote on it here from Steve Coogan. I think in the UK, people judged it against Partridge, but weirdly in the US, it's kind of got a cult following. I think that's because
he can just say what he wants. Sorry, you can just say what he wants there, can't he? Actually, in the US, they loved it. It's you that's wrong, UK people.
Big in Turkey. But weirdly in the US, it's got kind of a cult following. I think it's because it was about a rebel, an outsider. Basically, it was about the baby boomer generation who are now directionless. The whole counterculture thing of the 1960s, those guys are getting old now and their authority figures are younger than they are. I like sad characters and damaged people, and Saxondale's one of those guys. I will just say, Nick, if your interest has been piqued, I find it bloody hard to... Actually, no, I think it's on BritBox now. I did find I found it really hard for years to find it because I definitely watched it on TV when I was younger. Didn't get it, then maybe saw it once or twice on like Gold or something throughout the years.
Yeah.
I'd like to watch that. And then, I think in lockdown I brought the DVDs. And then
as we all did of everything. Just desperate for any content and not to just stare at the wall all day.
And I couldn't find the DVDs after that. Struggled on streaming services, but I think it's on BritBox. A really good show and highly recommended. It's in the time capsule.
It's in there now.
Has it made it there before Partridge? I don't think
there's any Partridge in there, actually. That's really that's a missing from our side, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Steve Coogan will be happy because he prefers Saxondale.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, the Trip's in there, isn't it?
Ah, yeah.
So we've got some Coogan in there, and the Trip's excellent anyway. I think we both almost agreed on that one too. But yeah, I'll give this a watch, actually. It was aired around then.
Definitely. It might bring back some happy memories of the Steve McClaren era as well. What's yours, Nick?
Mine is the song Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. The reason it's going in is because it became the first ever download-only song to become UK #1. Something
I think Tommy Saxondale would hate.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We can't get this in a bloody record shop. What do you mean we can't do this? Because back then, I think it was the fact that digitally things were released like a week before they were physically released.
Right.
Like singles and stuff like that. So you could still have them there, I think. Again, can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure it was just on downloads alone. Even if physical releases were possible for a single, this made #1 anyway. And it was one of those kind of weird moments of just this is what the future's becoming.
Yeah.
You can download music, amazing, and there's more people downloading it from this point onwards than there is physical, and that's kind of stayed the same ever since, and will do really.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know where they were downloading it from at this point? Would it have been iTunes?
iTunes was around by that point, definitely. I don't know what other kind of streaming services there was. Was Napster around still? But that was illegal actually, wasn't it? That one.
Yeah, and I don't think
it was famously shut down.
Yeah, I don't think there would have been any streaming services, as you just kind of accidentally said there, because iTunes wasn't really a streaming service, was it? As we know today.
There may have been other official ones, because surely it wasn't just if you had an iPod. There were other MP3 players. Yeah, so surely you wouldn't just be like, well, you've got to go through iTunes because you probably couldn't support it. But anyway, technical aside,
Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, technically aside, if you actually think about it as well, with the song itself, again, it was just one of those songs that just became everywhere, and maybe kind of the hype around it becoming the first UK #1 download-only single kind of helped it, but then it just became one of those unforgettable, played on everything songs forever, really.
Definitely. Yeah, it was it's definitely a worthy song because it didn't just go to #1 due to novelty, and it stayed there for a while.
Yeah, it was like Crazy Frog or anything like that. It was, when that was like Horrible Bad Days, you feel like the first ever internet #1 would be something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just reading its Wikipedia page. Apparently it was leaked a good few months before it actually came out.
This was the era of like stuff leaking and like being on like websites. Didn't like a Block Party leak, album leak around this time, about 6 months before it was due to come out, and everyone was like, "Well, we've heard it now."
They all did. They all used to flip in leaks so early on. It's crap really when you look back at it, because like I know you're definitely that guy, and I think I am pretty much as well. Where it's like, okay, I'm waiting till release day now, whether that's for a film or an album or anything like that. I mean, I don't even really listen to singles of some of my favorite bands because I want to hear like the album in full when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same with that too. I would never bother, and I just was never good at any of the downloading stuff. Like I was just useless at it, and I always had to get CDs off people. And what, because like I remember like a friend had a copy of the Killers album that came out around this period, and there's this one of the versions he ripped from it has got a skip in one of the songs. Like there's a little bit where the part of the song repeats, and for about 8 years I thought that was part of the song. Yeah, it was just his remix version, just because it had got a weird skip on it.
I didn't know this about Crazy. The band, so it was number one for 9 weeks in the UK, the longest number one spell for more than 10 years, before the band and their record company decided to remove the single from music stores so in the UK, so people would remember the song fondly and not get sick of it. A noble
move. Williams didn't do the same with Happy, did he? It's not quite the same. That went on forever.
Yeah, Song of the Summer. Did you see that Limmy tweet that he always does pretty much like every Friday?
Yeah, it's pretty much every couple of months that it just pops up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I remember with this as well. It was again one of those songs that was everywhere. So you had like people at school, they absolutely loved it. I remember my mom absolutely loved it as well. It was just something that like it was kind of like renowned everywhere. And I remember we were going to, I think my mom was driving us to a party at someone's house, and we stopped to get some drink or something, and the song was playing. I think my mom bought the CD of it, and she was playing it in the car, and my friend just got in the car and started just like bobbing his head and singing along to it, like top of his voice, just putting the voice of the vocalist on. And we got out the car and went in, bought whatever we were going to buy. Came out again, and the song was obviously still playing because it was on a CD. And he was like, "Oh, it's a long version. This isn't it? We were in there for ages." So.
I thought your story was going to go down like it was on all 5 channels on the radio or something like that.
No. I mean, it probably would have been at that point, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's much else to say really on that, unless I mean it's your pick, so don't let me stop you. But no,
that was kind of it. Just one of those monumental kind of moments in music, really, especially in UK music. I know they're American artists, but that's the thing, really, of probably everybody of our era remembers that song. It was really important because, like I say, it's never going to be outweighed again now, where it's so favoured in digital. When, I can't remember the last time I bought a physical copy of something that didn't mean like if I've had to buy it for like pre-sale for tickets, maybe.
Yeah.
That's probably the only time I'll just go, right, I'll just accept it's £10 I've got to spend, and I don't even know where that CD lives anymore.
Well, the good news for Saxondale is that you can download Deep Purple as well. It doesn't just have to be newfangled and old Barkley stuff. Right then, a big question, Nick. Why this? I'm not even going to say why this game, because I think we should introduce this episode with the fact that it's a bit of an outlier in the catalogue, this England catalogue. We kind of chatted post World Cup break about, similar to how the FA would, we would do things differently. We'd pick pods on form, we'd really invest in roots, podding across the UK. And we wanted to sort of take a fresh approach here and there. Obviously, we'll continue to cover games and stuff like that. I think we've, kind of alluded to this before, but this is really built around a story and a long period of time. So it might take us a while to get through and probably be a multi-part episode, similar to one we've done recently with the Fabio Capello focus as well.
You say long period of time. It wasn't long enough for Steve McClaren, really, was it? I think everybody who was kind of an England fan around this period, it's a real interesting turning point for England where things under Sven had gone so well, and then you kind of get into this McClaren era where you think, okay, well, they're still England. They'll they'll do all these things and qualify for tournaments and probably get knocked out in the quarterfinals, and there's still a lot of hope. But I think this is kind of the point, and until probably Southgate comes back, where it really starts to turn and people start to really dislike the national team.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my lifetime, definitely. And you know what? In the grand scheme of things, it happens quite often. You look at the Keegan era when they were at Euro 2000. There's a lot of abuse that goes on to the players. Graham Taylor as well. So it's every kind of like 8 years. This does happen, but it was the first time in my England supporting lifetime that I'd felt it did happen, and there's a long way to go with it.
Yeah, for some reason, I think he's. I suppose it was worse than Keegan's era, so it's going to be more maligned. But also, he doesn't have that same sort of universal loving from the public that Keegan has.
He can't have had that many games different to Keegan. Really, they must have managed around about the same amount of games.
Yeah. Well, no spoilers, but we can maybe look into that towards the end, because for everybody who who doesn't know about Steve McClaren and listening to this,
you've been living under a rock or under his hair island all these years.
But it may not be many games, but was it a really successful short era?
No worlds left to conquer kind of thing.
Yeah, done it all. Right. We're going to make a start then. And really, the place to start is the fallout from the World Cup 2006, where England were knocked out by Portugal on penalties.
I mean, it could be any year of that. It doesn't really narrow it down, does it? It felt like that happened every single year, and it did for a lot of time as well. 2004, it ended the exact same way as well. But there were different villains, different heroes on this occasion. So. Yep, it's one of these years, and England going out on penalties. It's only kind of half the story, really. England went out playing with 10 men due to Wayne Rooney making his foot well acquainted with Ricardo Carvalho's bollocks.
Yeah,
Cristiano Ronaldo also played his role by winking at the Portuguese bench, making him the reason that England went out.
Do you think that narrative has ever truly died? Or do you think just the care has ran out for it? Because I don't think it was ever concluded that it was actually Rooney's fault.
What do you think people just haven't blamed Rooney for it in general?
Yeah, like in the eyes of your average Englishman. I'm thinking the guy down the pub sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if it was like, you look at the Beckham one, and like even by this point, people had moved on from it's just this person's fault, let's burn effigies of them. But also it was kind of like the Beckham one kind of like fed into a bit more of the nation, because it was like, oh, you're getting sent off for that. How stupid are you? The Rooney one, really, apart from some people saying, oh, well, actually, he mistakenly steps on Ricardo Carvalho because Carvalho is pulling and tugging him and he ends up on the floor. And, he's just trying to place his foot down. When you watch it properly without those glasses on, he's not doing that. So maybe because he got sent off for like a proper act of aggression, like it wasn't ever seen as it being too bad. It's like, well, I'd have done that as well to that idiot Carvalho, that foreigner.
I think
maybe it was kind of that.
I think the aim was, I don't know, it was that wink with Ronaldo, and I feel people did genuinely believe for years, and maybe still do, that he influenced the referee by winking at him as if to say, "Get him off, son."
Well,
it's just such mental.
Yeah. But the thing is, because he goes over and immediately is in the middle of it, and he's shouting at the referee to send Wayne Rooney off. Yeah. When really and it was seen as, they can't play together anymore because they're at Man United together, and I think really they buried it immediately, like almost. And Rooney didn't blame him. It was just one of those things that happened. But I remember after that incident, Ronaldo was on course to win. I think he was Young Player of the Tournament at that World Cup, and like there was just an online campaign to get that eradicated, and Schweinsteiger won it, I think, just by like people going, no, Ronaldo, he disrespected us, he can't do that.
An online campaign, we got Ronaldo cancelled. I don't even remember that, but I probably voted in it, to be fair, whilst downloading Crazy by Niles Barkley. But the wink or the kick or the stamp or whatever, what have you, the end result was still England's defeat in the World Cup, and Portugal went through. It had already been declared that Sven-Göran Eriksson would be leaving. So this was prior to the tournament. We knew as far back as January that he would be leaving his post as England manager after, God, it feels like longer, but are we talking about 5 years?
Yeah, it would have only been
squares 3 tournaments in there, didn't he?
Yeah, it would have only been around that. I think when we looked at it, it took so long to actually get him appointed. I think he started in 2001, and even then he was like, I don't really want to be here, or he did like this weird consultation thing.
Yeah.
It feels like he was there a lot longer. Again, maybe it's just because for me, he was like the first England manager I'd properly known. It was just like he'd always been there in my mind. There was no like before or after.
Definitely. But it wasn't time's probably just running out for us both here. Maybe it's best to part ways. It wasn't one of those sort of departures, even though it probably should have been. I do think the team would probably run its course, but no. The English media would force Sven-Göran Eriksson's hand. So Sven had been caught in a classic, good-natured, horrible news of the world sting, which they, sort of made a forte for themselves of over the years. It's the fake sheikh, a man dressed up in sort of sheikh garb, pretending to buy Aston Villa, and from memory, sort of promising Sven the Man City experience before it was the Man City experience. Entrapment much?
Yeah, it's kind of entrapment. And from memory, it was like he was like Sven like promised them that he'd bring David Beckham to Aston Villa and things like that. Just like, you can't promise this, Sven, really, even if you're at this like nice dinner and you're being courted by them. But it's not the first time Sven had done something like this. Like it had seen that he was going to replace Alex Ferguson at Man United, and he'd pretty much only just got the job, and he'd gone through that great early period. And it was talking Ferguson would have retired. I think he would have been the favourite to succeed him. So you just think already you're doing that. There was talk of him going to Chelsea, I think, before Mourinho did too.
Yeah.
So FA was, he's no stranger to loving a pound note, is he, Sven? And as we say, he's probably coming to the end of it anyway. Like by the look of it, so he's got 2 years left to run on his contract. But discussions with the FA Supreme Leader Brian Barwick meant that he'd leave after the World Cup. So it's essentially like a delayed sacking.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go now, but because you've done that bad, we're not going to honour your 2 years. But at the same time, it was kind of like Sven had kind of had his time with England. It was that, he'd had a brilliant generation of players. It got them playing well at 2002 when they were kind of stripped back a little bit with some of the injuries they got, and they were a little unlucky, even though they were awful against Brazil when it really counted.
Yeah.
2004, Rooney comes in and is the most informed player in the world and goes off injured, and England just don't hold on against Portugal. So you kind of go, that's understandable. But in 2006, it seemed like everything was kind of there. And Sven, having not made decisions for so long in terms of who you're going to play in midfield, who you're going to drop, who you're going to bring on, he kind of just let the team drift. And from then on, was just trying to just play everyone at the same time, and just it didn't work the balance. And I don't think England really play well at all in that entire tournament. They just splutter their way to it before going out to Portugal.
I don't think they would have lasted the 2 years, had the fake sheikh not come along. I don't think Sven would have made it to 2008. I think, like you say, 2006 was probably the end. And the tournament would have been seen in a bit of a different light had we known that there were 2 more years of him to come. But alas, there wasn't. He made one request upon his exit from the hot seat, which was for England to not kill Wayne Rooney for his stompy actions. What do you think of that? What do you think of that as a parting? I'm trying to find a cynical angle to it, because actually I've always quite liked that, and it kind of put Wayne Rooney over. It made him feel super special that this manager's, in his moment of biggest sort of crisis, being sacked, has actually taken the time to single out one player in particular and say, this is the guy.
Especially after he's come through his first big problem in football, really, because Rooney had never known anything apart from brilliance up to this point. Exploded onto the scene with Everton, gets his huge move to Manchester United, and he already becomes one of their best players as soon as he walks through the door. He gets injured before the 2006 World Cup, so he's not fit on his way back, and that's one of the reasons he kicks out in that Portugal game. He's on his own up front, and he is just so frustrated that he can't get into the game. And I think he even said that wasn't he? Didn't he like on his first training session back? He like tore his groin or something.
Did he? Oh,
yeah,
God.
it was me, and he didn't tell any of the England staff either.
Yes, right. Yeah. I'll get it now. Yeah. That definitely happened, and yeah, it was just pure frustration. But not kill him. What do you think he meant by not kill Rooney?
I think it was just because he saw what happened maybe from afar with Beckham in 1998, 2002. There wasn't really a villain from memory. It was Ronaldinho, but it was an opposition player. I guess England went out on penalties in 2004, and I think Beckham got a lot of stick for that. I think Vassell as well, but in that same way, Sven never picked Vassell again, so kind of a bit of his fault too. But yeah, I think he was just trying to preempt the idea that they were going to just go and try and ruin Rooney's career almost, and get one of those things where you get booed up and down the country by opposition fans, usually West Ham fans.
Yeah.
So he was just trying to preempt that and just say, look, he's obviously an incredibly special player. He's going to be around for a long time. Just go easy. You don't need to do this. And it's right that England fans didn't need to do it yet.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of I feel like he was alluding to the press as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely the press are one in that as well, because they kind of make or break who is and isn't in the shit, basically.
Exactly. Speaking of in the shit, the FA have had a long time now to decide, who's going to take over from Sven. It was a positive. I don't think many fans wouldn't have seen it as a positive era. Maybe you get some arguing that it was like a waste of a good generation, but I think Sven did have a lot to do with getting the team back up. And as we've said before, it was we take quarterfinals for granted a lot in this era, and they're not always that easy to come by. Sven did a bloody good job, but the hunt is on to replace him. It was decided within the FA that they would only look for an English manager due to the initial backlash following Sven's appointment. The decision was made immediately after they offered Luis Felipe Scolari the job, and the Portugal manager, turning it down. So yeah, didn't want him anyways. Next,
absolutely, yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. So I guess it does start with Scolari. I think we've spoke about it a little bit in the past and call it a bit of a sliding doors moment. Something I hadn't picked up on and that you have in the notes is that Scolari had knocked England out of the 3 previous tournaments. Obviously managing Brazil, then Portugal. And yeah, so that's who England turned to. I mean, that is some deep analysis, isn't it?
Who's good? Who's made us look bad? Him, right? That's your man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He was incredibly sought after at this point as well. He was seen as a genius. He'd won the World Cup with Brazil in 2002. I think he got Portugal to their final in 2004, but we lost to Greece in kind of it was just a freak result that Greece even had got that far, and he just seemed like a fairy tale and written in the stars.
Yeah.
In 2006, I think they lost to. I can't think they lost to now. You may have been Germany. I think maybe in the next round. I want to say.
That rings a bell. But yeah, he'd done bloody well.
Yeah. Oh no, it was France. They lost to France in that, and obviously that was in the semi-final because England were not taking the quarters. So yeah, I mean he done amazing. Really, seen as the successor to Sven. Arsenal's David Dean was on the panel to appoint Sven's successor and was a big fan of Scolari and had really pushed for him. I think he'd flown over to visit him as well, by all accounts too, and was seen as right. This is the man to do it. But the FA were really split on it as well in terms of. Do they want and essentially the foreign manager again, and all the kind of stuff that goes along with that too?
Yes would be the answer really when you consider that Scolari was offered 2 contracts, 5-year contract or a 7-year contract. So the FA exactly. I mean that's big, isn't it?
Yeah,
5 years or 7 years. It's up to you. We're just happy to be doing business with you.
Yeah, we're just happy to be around the table with you, Phil. Really,
what kind of person wouldn't take the 7-year out of those 2? Like it could just kick up a fuss, get sacked, and get all the money from the rest of it anyway.
I know, yeah. That's a strange one that they offer him 2 different deals. Like, right, we've got a good one or an even better one for you.
I just think it's that classic. The FA, this vague, ambiguous sort of shit show of an organisation that we've spoken about so many times.
This gas.
Yeah, the absolute gas of the FA. So it seemed kind of all done and dusted until the good old British press got their mitts on Scolari, basically. So they'd done Sven over with the whole fake shake thing, left England searching for a new manager. They found that new manager, and then 20 journalists camp outside Phil Scolari's house, leading him to say, I don't like this pressure. It may be a part of another culture, but it's not part of mine. The FA has a list of names it will choose its next manager from, but mine isn't one of them because I am closing this matter now. I am happy that they considered me, but I don't want anything more to do with this because for 2 days my life has been invaded and my privacy has been destroyed.
Even though he said beforehand that he'd never spoken to the FA about it. And then he gets to this point and he's like, I can't even do this. Like the first time he's like basically essentially admitted he's been talking to the FA all this time, really.
Yeah.
They got to like the compensation stage of it, and this is where the FA fly to Portugal to seal the deal. They leave thinking they've got their man, and then this kind of happens, and he goes, if this is what it's about, going to be like already, then just forget it. We can't do this. And this was in the April of 2006. So this is right on the eve of the World Cup where they would be wanting to select their new manager by now. They've had since January to do it, and they've gone, the process has been done. This is your man. Shit.
Yeah, somebody on that flight back when they think it's all sealed has texted a journal, haven't they? Going, got a story for you. Keep it stum.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the fingers are being pointed like backstage at the FA. Who's done this? And nobody's owned up because they're all a bunch of wallies.
There's like a FA Malcolm Tucker. Who's fucking leaked this?
Exactly. But I will say, I don't think Scolari would have done great things with the England squad that Steve McClaren ends up sort of taking over. He's a great manager. I mean, have we spoke about before? Is he still managing? He is, isn't he?
Don't know. He was. We've covered him quite a lot. I say he's probably the most spoken about opposition manager we have or ever will speak about, because it's like all this time with Portugal and Brazil. He manages Brazil again and takes them to the 2014 World Cup as well. I think he's still managing, but I don't think he'll be at he's not going to be Brazil manager again, I don't think.
You never know, dear. You just never know. But, God, his CV is a mad one, really. There's not like...
It's Chelsea. The Chelsea one is so mad because it felt like he was finally going to come to England and do something. I think he was sacked by like February or something.
Yeah. It's nothing really. I mean, no offense, but like...
Just the World Cup.
Aside from the international football, which he keeps getting good jobs in, which is right. I mean, he never really took a step outside of his comfort zone. By the looks of it, it's all Brazil, like Brazilian teams. Sorry, Palmeiras about 5 times. A couple of like Al Shabaab, Kuwait, Cruzeiro, Portugal, Chelsea, Brazil. Those are the only ones that I look at and go, yeah, proper sort of. But then again, it just shows you don't have to manage in England or whatever to be an elite world-class manager, right?
Yeah, we look at someone like...
He didn't go to like Real Madrid or so. Sorry, he didn't go to like Real Madrid or something.
It feels like he would have been like Real Madrid for 6 months, doesn't it? Around, especially around this period as well, where like Carlos Queiroz got the job, like Benitez gets it after Mourinho. They were just employing absolutely crazy people at Real Madrid at this point. You think, how have they not thrown every bit of money they've got at Scolari to just go, just look after these babies?
Well, England tried that and it failed. So it was back to the drawing board for the FA, but they did have a shortlist. By God, if they had nothing else, they had a shortlist. Come on, that's a lot of time, effort, and admin. Definitely worth probably however many millions that board of people were paid.
Oh God!
Come up with a shortlist, and imagine how long it took. Which even me and you could have probably done in an afternoon.
Just name an English manager, and they still picked like a Portuguese one.
And the next,
just like for fuck's sakes. Well, they've done all their due diligence at least as well. Like they'd gone through all this period, like people, and then they'd gone for Scolari. But they at least had the idea of like, well, let's do all the other interviews. Let's make the charade of it. The people we don't want to be the manager, let's just carry on with all that and just for a good few months while we have some FA dinners.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Back to that drawing board, though, and one name that was on there, another Englishman, Big Martin O'Neill. Christ almighty. Martin O'Neill, then, he'd started management in the lower leagues. He's obviously a Clough disciple. Started management in the lower leagues before gaining promotion to the Premier League with Leicester City. The Northern Irishman had tasted silverware at Filbert Street before moving on to manage Celtic. The Scottish League was actually quite a good standard at that time, and he absolutely smashed it before stepping away from football in 2005 to care for his wife, who was ill. But by this point, 2006, April, sort of maybe a bit before, a bit after that, he's sort of kind of open to taking the job. I always had him down as potentially Sir Alex's replacement at Man United.
Yeah, I think he was. I think just because he'd done so well at Celtic, and it wasn't just the fact that he went in there, he won something, he kind of done whatever. You know, again, the Scottish League was a really good standard at this point, and they got a lot of good players in that team. You know, people like Henrik Larsson, you know, Neil Lennon was there. I think Alan Thompson was playing really well, like an Englishman who barely ever got an England cap. Chris Sutton, John Hartson, Petrov. So there's a lot of good players there. Not quite this era yet, I don't think. I don't know if that was O'Neill or not by then, but
probably
he was
not.
Yeah, but they get on really well. These two do as well, don't they?
Of course,
Keane was always his number two whenever he took him anywhere for like quite a long period of time.
Yeah, I assume they wouldn't because they're quite different characters, but I guess he takes different strokes, you know.
I always like Martin O'Neill. Like I always thought he was a good manager, but when there's a bit in, I think he's at like a World Cup or something, or he's doing a punditry with a few of the guys. And he goes, well, wait a minute. And like they're all kind of like talking over. He goes, wait a minute, can we hands up here who's ever won the Champions League? It's just like everyone just goes really quiet. But yeah, anyway, as I was saying.
Oh, what as an actual power play, or was he a bit tongue in cheek?
I think he was joking around, but I think like they were kind of like slightly deriding him, just like, oh, this is what you do at international football. We've played at World Cups and all that. And he was like, okay, yeah, just one more question. Like he Columboed them.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was Rangers were really good at this period as well, and he got Celtic to a European Cup final, not the European Cup, but it was the UEFA Cup back then, and losing to Mourinho's Porto as well.
Well, he didn't get this job. There's an interesting article from not too long after, really, when he opened up on the radio, I think, and this covers that interview about if you were offered the job, would you have took it? He said it's one of the great jobs in football. It's one of the great jobs in football. Had it been offered, then I would have been absolutely foolish to turn it down. If Brian Clough, who had an ego the size of 15 houses, had enough humility to go for an interview for the England job, then the rest of us mortals should be able to subject ourselves to that. It was a fantastic experience. He also said that he thought the interview went fine, but that there was a bit of an agenda already at the table, maybe as to what, you've alluded. He also said maybe the process could have been handled better in terms of maybe waiting until after the World Cup. He said he thinks that would have saved an awful lot of problems for the FA if they'd waited. And on sort of the reason he stepped away from football, he did say, I think my wife would want me to get back to football now because I'm an absolute nuisance around the place at the moment. Classic retired football manager line, isn't he?
I know, yeah. It's kind of like Roy Hodgson. Like you just think, God, enjoy your time away from football. But then he just keeps coming back. But look, at time record, and he's doing amazing at Crystal Palace for this short period of time. So yeah, it happens. And then you look at someone like Neil Warnock as well. I mean, I think he's about to save Huddersfield from being relegated, and that was definitely, I'm not doing it again. I'm not coming out.
I didn't even know. I mean, now you mention it, yeah, I'd completely forgot he'd gone back because he's not in like the promotion race. So at time of recording, Hodgson, as you say, is one who's sort of back in the hot seat after retiring. But at time of recording as well today, there's a certain big chap who is looking like he's going to be back in the Premier League within a matter of hours. And by the time this is out, he's probably got Leeds United relegated. It's big Sam Allardyce. And he was obviously a huge name in the frame for this appointment to replace Sven.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another man interviewed was Big Sam Allardyce. Here we find Allardyce at his forward-thinking and entertaining best. This is kind of like the best you'll ever see of Allardyce, I always think, in this period. His
different gravy.
Yeah, lots of it. His Bolton side were entering their kind of best vintage around here and playing. They played direct football, but they definitely weren't like hard to watch or anything. I always thought they were a really, really interesting team.
They were great. Absolutely used to love them because you could always rely on them to slip up a big team. I feel like they absolutely had Arsenal on toast for a good few years.
Oh yeah, definitely. It felt like every time like Arsenal went to the Reebok, there was always a big story of like Allardyce being like, "Yeah, I've bloody done him again, haven't I? I told you exactly." That Wenger, he doesn't know what he's doing when he comes around here, and he just took such joy in like upsetting like the bigger clubs because they didn't have like a massive budget, but they had a decent amount of budget because they brought in some amazing players in this period. I mean, around this time they got multiple Champions League winner Ivan Campo. The wonderful Welshman, Gary Speed, was playing. Bond villain, El Hadj Diouf, as well, was around. The little lump, Kevin Davies, and even Hidetoshi Nakata. So some amazing names there.
Did he want the England job at this time? Obviously, the way we think about Sam Allardyce now is that he always wanted the England job, or he always wanted a different job to the ones he got, really, but mainly that England job. But when things are going that well at a club like Bolton and he's doing what he's doing there, was it a bit early? Or do you think he thought the time was right and Bolton was a stepping stone to England?
I don't think he ever saw Bolton as a stepping stone. I think because he made his managerial career there, so well and was so synonymous with the club and everything they were achieving and being that big figurehead for it. I think he was ready for the job because while Bolton were brilliant around this point, it wasn't long until he did leave Bolton as well, and it just got a little stale. I think it was 2007 he left, so it was not long after this when he does leave. I think it's the same season really afterwards. So maybe he just thought, it's about the time now for him to leave. And I think he ends up going to Newcastle, and his first game for Newcastle is away at Bolton, just written perfectly, absolutely. Oh. But yeah, he was I think kind of at his primary because he was really into. There was kind of that technology you heard about quite a lot that talked about like players getting fatigue and I can't think what it's called now.
He wasn't just a lumpet merchant. He was like, I don't even know how to describe what he was, but it was
He thought it was Prozone. He was really into I think it was Prozone. It was called. So this kind of like technology they would use to like monitor like everything that players did. I remember one time there was like the offside rule had changed. So it used to be that if you were like stood in an offside position and the ball was kicked like towards you or anyone around you, you were offside. So the play was stopped. So that would do that. But then it changed. So the interfering with play rule came in around this time. And Allardyce, I remember, I think it was almost on like one of the first weekends it came in. He stuck like two players on a goalkeeper for a free kick. And it was like, well, what the hell is he doing here? Because they're clearly going offside. But what they would do is that because that would put everybody off, he'd play the ball like not towards those players, but to other players who were coming in. But it made the rest of the defence kind of go backwards. I think there was a game at Leicester where there was a really weird goal scored, and everyone went, well, that's not going to be allowed, is it? But the referee was like, no, that's totally legal, just because like the other players offside. And he was really forward thinking at that point.
Imagine what he could do with Peter Crouch.
Wow, hopefully. That's what he must have been thinking if he was going to get the job. He'd have played Kevin Davies, we know that.
Yeah, he probably would have. But, to kind of answer my own question, he seemingly did take his sort of place on that shortlist seriously and began sort of a campaign, to get some big names on side. One big name that he tried to get on side was Sir Dave of Beckham. Mm-hmm. He wanted him on board as a bit of a Sam Allardyce ambassador. Now I kind of respect him for that. Kind of going to the captain of the team and being like, come on, pal. Don't let these foreigners get to you. You know me. Because he probably thinks Beckham is quite easily manipulated as well by somebody like him.
He's putting a bit soft. Yeah, he's putting a word for him as well. Because I guess he was mates with Sir Alex Ferguson around this point as well. So you think, maybe I'll get an in from him, and maybe he didn't get that recommendation from Ferguson. So he's like, right, who's best? Who's best next? So Beckham. Yeah, I'll see if David Beckham will back me. I mean, I've no idea if David Beckham did back him or put in a good word. I can't really imagine those two even in the same room.
No, I know. Apparently, they did have a secret meeting though, and Sam Allardyce said that David said the next manager needs to have experience to handle Champions League and World Cup games, but I didn't agree with him. I got on the front foot and asked David to have lunch in Madrid. He could see I was have lunch at Madrid, not Bolton, right? I'll come to you. He could see I was serious, and I think I left having convinced him I could do it. So obviously that's Sam's. Maybe he left, and Beckham was like, this guy is not going to be able to do it. Definitely not. I'm more convinced than ever after he flew to fucking Madrid and made me pay for his lunch that he's not going to be the next England manager.
Beckham's definitely having to pick up that bill, isn't he?
He said
after about 19 tapases.
He said if anybody at the FA asked him about me, he wouldn't have a problem, but he didn't think he would have a say. He's fobbed him off there, hasn't he? Look,
obviously, I wouldn't have a problem with you, but I've got nothing to do with it. They've got a big list of people that is on that board, and I'm not on it. I'm afraid.
I'm just little old Bex. What can I say?
Man's are tied.
He was obviously in the camp of he needs to be an Englishman for the job, but it wasn't to be that particular Englishman. In your note you've put that Big Sam took that snub as a sort of a supervillain origin story, and it kind of set the rest of his career in motion.
Yeah, it did really, because from not getting this job, everything kind of slightly changes for Allardyce. So he goes to Newcastle, and he doesn't really get the time needed to turn the club around. I think they'd had Souness and after Bobby Robson, and so we hadn't really worked out at Newcastle. He went there. I think he's gone by February or something like that. And I think that may even be when they bring Keegan in around that point, or maybe like Hoddle, or not so Hoddle, Glenn Roeder, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's all that weird Mike Ashley, the start of that period here. But then from then on, it's just kind of that ever trying to think of, right, I'll prove to them they should have given me the job. And it's until very late on he does achieve that. But this is that kind of then dark period of like, I can't quite remember where he went. He was at Everton, I think, later on. Sunderland, obviously, as well. But
West Ham about 5 times and shit like that. Yeah, we're talking sort of, I mean, we're not far off his West Brom time and Leeds now.
Leeds now, yeah, back in the game.
Honestly, by the time this comes out, he will be back out the game. I can guarantee you that. There's still more. Others kind of threw and withdrew their hats from the ring. First being Gus Hiddink. At this time, Hiddink was managing 2 teams in PSV and Australia, and said he was open to meetings about a third. Absolute glutton for punishment. I mean, PSV, Australia and England, that's nobody's idea of fun, is it?
I know, yeah. I'm assuming he would have left Australia at this point to go and manage England, but I love this kind of like football manager game, like kind of thing of like, right, I'm bored just doing club management now. Oh, what jobs are available here? Australia, yes, let's do this here. I always used to do that on football. I knew I was in a good football manager save if I got like a good few regens in and I was an international manager while being a club manager. I loved that.
They should let like flipping Guardiola manage like not even countries. Just if you want to manage 2 teams, just keep them far apart. Like he could go, right, well, obviously I like having all the money in the world at Manchester City, but I'd also like to manage like a Belgian 3rd tier team and see if I can like, lift them up and what have you.
I'll show company how easy it actually is.
Yeah. I don't think Man City would be too happy, but there you go. It's for the good of the game. But yeah, Hiddink's agent, said the FA had sounded him out initially, but no official talks were held. Stuart Pearce was also an initial candidate, but that wasn't to be, really, was it?
No, everyone kind of woke up and realised it was just an intrusive thought, and they just went back to the shortlist after that. I just thought Stuart Pearce was the England manager for a second. Oh, sorry about that. Where were we?
One day, one game.
Well, he was the Man City manager at this point. I think that may have been following on from Keegan as well, and he was doing all right, but I think that mental decision to play David James up front kind of killed any hopes of that, didn't it?
Mental. We do have another candidate, a strong candidate in Alan Kirbishley. Kirbishley had been Charlton athletic manager since 1991 and had seen them go from a Division 1 side to being promoted twice to the Premier League before becoming a stalwart in the top flight, finishing as high as 7th in the Prem in 2004, getting shades of sort of Hodgson from that record and shades of Taylor as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, coming up through the divisions as well and being at Charlton for so long, and one of those rare occurrences of a manager getting a team promoted. And I guess this was back then when managers did get more time, getting them relegated, and Charlton still sticking with him. Go, no, you are the best person to kind of keep us, bring us back up again. Yeah. And they were rewarded for it as well, because Charlton were another team who kind of, they upset a lot of other teams. They beat kind of the teams who were worse than them. And they just carried on bringing through all these great players. And even though there were kind of like a lot of misfits, like I always remember like Jason Ewell, Klaus Jensen, I think Paolo Di Canio played for him for a few seasons as well.
Yeah, Jason Ewell. It's a great blast from the past.
I know, it's just odd, but Charlton kind of became, their success was kind of their own downfall, because they were in that weird middle period of the league where they were never really going to get into Europe often. If at all, really. But they were also never going to get relegated under Kirbishley because he put the infrastructure there so well. And it was kind of the first time I remember a club being like that, where the fans were like, bored of this mid-table security. And you see teams over the last 10 years really go into that as well. I mean, Stoke, they were a team who just were never, ever going to go down until they did. And they tried to change things. Swansea for a while, Burnley really recently under Deutsch, they were like about 7th, and it was just like, we're quite bored of watching this. And Palace seem to have done that over the last 10 years too.
Yeah, definitely. You get that sort of itch, but Kirbishley did well, seen as a manager who could do even better and do bigger things if he was given more resources. He was actually in the frame to replace Gerard Houllier as Liverpool manager in around 2004. And funnily enough, around the time of this sort of England manager interview process, he decided he was going to leave Charlton after 15 years. They'd be relegated the following season.
Yeah, around this period as well. He's obviously done really well at Charlton, but then it's kind of that identity crisis of what do you want out of football? Do we want this safety all the time? And he's probably thinking the same thing as well of, what else can I achieve here? So when he does leave Charlton, it came as a bit of a surprise, and everyone agreed it was the right thing to do. And I think he did have his eye on the job here too, because it's that exact period where you'd think he thought he was going to get it, and he just agreed that, look, I don't want anything standing in my way of maybe a chairman wants a fee and all that stuff too. But even like ex-England managers were coming out and supporting him too. So Bobby Robson was a big fan of his actually, and said that he was the man most equipped to handle the pressures of international management, saying that he saw a lot of himself in Kirbishley when comparing his Charlton team and Robson's Ipswich as well. But I don't really know what that means when he says he's able to handle the pressures of international management, but he's never done it himself.
I just think it means he's older.
Yeah, but he's just never done it himself.
In
terms of being an international manager. And he's also like, obviously like the race to get promoted and stay in the league, but then you English managers ever win anything. So it's just so hard to just go, well, where is that winning mentality that you would need at international level? I think the only England manager that's ever managed an international side before appointment was Hodgson.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, if I'm confused, then I'm not the only one, because there was a poll asking the public who should be the next England manager, and the most popular choice, we've taken in 30% of the votes, was don't know.
I didn't see him on the list anywhere.
I did well. He did well for Leeds actually for a little while, but
okay,
reminiscent of Keith in The Office. If don't know wasn't an option, the second biggest response was actually from Martin O'Neill, followed by Stuart Pearce, followed by Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, it doesn't speak well for Kirbishley, does it? Really, that don't know is much more the preferable for him. And Stuart Pearce is number 3 on that list. Then
don't know. Martin
who wasn't even on their
Stuart,
short. Yeah, he wasn't even on their short list.
Sam Allardyce, and that is pretty much it for all of the candidates, except for the one who actually gets the job. He was lower than them, and oh my god, yeah. we're at that point.
So we've kind of gone through the runners and the riders, who made the short list, who was just an idea in someone's eyes. Just quickly want to see if we can maybe pick each other for see who would we have appointed if we were Brian Barwick. Who would we have gone? You're my man. You're coming to the third interview, past the tea and cakes meeting or whatever that one was.
So who have we got then? Let's have a quick rundown.
So far we have Steve McClaren himself.
Yeah.
Alan Kirbishley, Martin O'Neill, and Sam Allardyce. There were kind of others running around the order. If anyone else springs to mind, and you think, you know what, real left field. Well, Stuart Pearce was robbed.
Phil Scolari is notable by his absence.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm kind of thinking England did offer him the job, and he said sod off. So once you've got to sod off, do you just go back to the drawing board with the list, or do you go wild card?
Every no is a yes. It's salesman speak. No, but yeah, he's gone. So it's McClaren, Kirbishley, O'Neill, Allardyce / left field. So we're picking, are we? Is this England admin board? I think we should maybe start and see if we can like meet somewhere in the middle. I mean, when we were talking it through, I really, really felt like Allardyce was by far the best option. I just felt like he was actually doing really good stuff. Clearly, like in one of those jobs as well, not like Ferguson. I know Ferguson's Scottish, but it's not like he's not going to leave his club to manage England, because he probably would have with it being Bolton, despite them doing well.
Definitely.
And it could have been interesting. Well, we all know it could have been interesting and would later be interesting. But also, as we were talking through, I just completely discounted, due to my lack of knowledge, Kirbishley's CV, and I thought that seems a good fit.
Yeah. It's kind of another sensible one with Kirbishley, isn't it? Him and McClaren have kind of got a bit of a similar vibe. I guess you got Kirbishley, who's promoted. O'Neill got promoted with Leicester. Allardyce would have got promoted as well. McClaren wouldn't have. So there's three managers who've kind of come up through the English system almost, in terms of you start low and you work up.
Yeah.
McClaren's probably the only one in there that doesn't do that. And maybe that's just they're saying that he would have been like a company man, and it's just kind of got everything given to him. But they've all kind of earned where they've come from, and you can definitely see that with Kirbishley, just being really steady, performing better with the tools he's got. And again, you probably say that's the same for Allardyce as well. They made the most of with the players they had, with the teams and resources they had as well.
Allardyce just a sexier appointment, though. I know those words kind of don't really go together, but that would have been something to get excited about. Whereas with Kirbishley, it would have been like, right then, let's get fit. Let's dial this in. Let's take it down a notch, and let's just be comfortable for a bit.
In a way, he's kind of the less sexy version of McClaren as well.
Yeah, that's true as well.
It's kind of McClaren without the sex. It's not.
These three men are not. I mean, the sex appeal is low across the board there.
The sexometer, it's not even showing up on that. It's just 0 for all of them. Do
you kind of echo that, or do you think somebody else is? I mean, even McClaren, would you have gone? Yeah, he's probably the one.
I think from memory at the time and looking back, I think I wanted Martin O'Neill, because I'm glad
you said that.
Yeah, because just for a bit of debate. I remember just thinking he'd done so well at Celtic, and it really can't be stressed of the difference he made. Recently, I think he was on Monday Night Football, and Jamie Carragher made the point of saying to him that just because managers aren't Alex Ferguson or Guardiola or Klopp or whoever, just because you're not that level, you're kind of forgotten about and you're not given the respect. And he said you were a brilliant manager, genuinely. And I think that really gets forgotten, maybe just because he didn't really do much at Sunderland, and he was at Ireland for a long time, and people didn't like him by the end. And he was at Forest for like a week or something mental like that.
Yeah. I was glad you said it, not just for the purposes of debate, but also like, I think I would have wanted O'Neill at the time, because he's one of those managers that you just always liked. I mean, he was such a likeable personality, and he did do good things. And like you say, he was doing really good stuff with Celtic as well. And I don't think we can appoint him though.
Well, I think as well with the Celtic stuff, they beat Liverpool, who were about 4th in the league as well at that point, on the way to that UEFA Cup final they played in as well. So they were a really good team at that time. Like I said, the Scottish football was in a really good place then. So it wasn't just like, they beat some teams no one had ever heard of to get there. I'm pretty sure they won at Anfield to get there. And it was a really good side he put together. Tactically, I think he did things quite interesting from memory of me watching this football 22 years ago, however long it was. I think he would have been the really interesting choice and maybe the dangerous one. Because because technically you've still got, a foreign manager, non-English manager there.
That's what I was going to say as well.
So maybe you've got that bit of danger there. Apparently he'd just start fights with himself and random people all the time. I think he said on Monday Night Football the other night as well.
No wonder. Actually, I keep thinking that Roy Keane doesn't like him, but he does like him. I was going to say no wonder Keane didn't get on with him, but I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page, really random, but the name of the club where he started his professional playing career?
Don't know, actually.
Distillery.
Just Distillery.
seven appearances and 3 goals there before he went to Nottingham Forest.
That is Peter Taylor, grabbing him out of fucking nowhere, that is, isn't it? I found this player. Where's he played? Distillery. No, not yet. We're in training here, Peter. Come on.
They while at Distillery, he won the Irish Cup in 1971, scoring twice over in a 3-0 win over Derry in the final. As a result of winning the cup, Distillery qualified for Europe the following season. O'Neill would score against Barcelona in a Cup Winners' Cup game, a 3-1 defeat. That was where he was spotted by Forest.
Man, Peter Taylor was at both of those games. It was like, well, he's clearly the best player here, isn't he?
He's the best player in the world.
Standing out now.
I think for that reason he's got to be appointed. What could have been the Martin O'Neill era.
I know, yeah. I'd say that. I'd say probably bottom of my list would have been Herbishley. McClaren again for me at the time. It just kind of seemed the most sensible thing the FA could have done, and kind of maybe backwards working. It was our great plan all along to get him in there as the number 2 and just keep appointing him. Maybe he could keep the same car parking space.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things, really. And the other left field candidates, I don't think that really England left anybody out. I think they kind of contacted every breathing, living manager who was who could have been interested. That was it, really. I mean, even calls back for old England managers like Venables. Venables got involved, didn't he? He was around. Maybe that was the next plan of an even more genius plan. Terry Venables is next. We've already got him back here.
Yeah, I'm sure McClaren would have loved that, hanging over him from the start. He's next no matter what happens. Venables is just waiting, purring.
Hasn't that happened in the Netherlands before? I'm almost certain that they announced like their manager and they said, actually, this is only for one tournament. This is your next guy as well. Like the Netherlands have done that, and Netherlands famously they've won loads of trophies clearly, so that's word. Even with their fucking total football. I think it was Van Gaal's successor, maybe.
He's back there though again, isn't he? Or he's retired now, hasn't he? LVG.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was when he retired or something, and then it was Koeman was going to be the next guy. That was it, because Van Gaal said that it was going to be his one last job, and then it was Koeman was going to be next. And I think that's where they are now, from memory, because it was so long ago when they first talked about it.
It is, looking at Google. So we've kind of run them down there. I think we kind of came to an agreement that Martin O'Neill's time at Distillery is what kind of sets him over the edge.
Absolutely, yeah. What more does he need? He's got all the trophies and he knows his way around a whiskey place. Brilliant.
Right. The Steve McClaren. We're talking about the Steve McClaren era, but to get there, to understand the era, we must understand the man. Now, the spoilers of we've shared the spoilers. This is the man who gets the England job. This isn't Scolari. This isn't O'Neill. This isn't Allardyce with his pro zone. This isn't Stuart Pearce with his playing a goalkeeper up front, or Alan Kirbishley with his 15 years of Premier League and Division 1 experience. This is Steve McClaren, who had made a nice little coaching career for himself to get to this stage. He ended his playing career at Oxford United and joined Jim Smith's coaching team at Derby County in 1995. So that's what they're like. Is that like 20 years before he gets in with a shout to be an England manager? Not a bad turnaround, really, is it? That 20 years, a bit of coaching to England manager.
He'd done really well in that period, hadn't he, at Derby County from about 95. And it's weird because you must think that the word goes around if there's a good coach that not many people have heard of, like on the scene. Because like from that, so Alex Ferguson picks him to replace Brian Kidd in 1999 as his assistant manager, and was seen as one of the guys who would come in and just do the coaching for Ferguson because he just never was interested with it after a certain period of time.
The wonder kid.
And just getting in someone new as well, just like new ideas when the kid had gone to become the Blackburn manager, and literally just months later, McClaren's won the treble at Man United.
How in this era does word of a good coach spread beyond the club to the point where Sir Alex Ferguson's like, I want them? Because it must be the coach, right? It must be the coach himself. Just go and put it out there. There's a good coach at Derby at the moment, and his name's Steve McClaren. But that's you.
I guess it was that Ferguson had his like finger in so many pies, and he just knew so many people. He would soon find out that actually it's like the stuff in the coaching sessions, because that's what you hear about McClaren. Not a great manager, in his entirety is seen as. But
how dare you?
Well, it just shows what he's doing today. Really, he's going and being a very good coach, isn't he? By all accounts, and the training sessions or whatever they do, I'd love to be able to like hear from players what made him so good, because there's very actually little gets said about him as a coach himself. It was like Carlos Queiroz as well was always seen as a great coach that a lot of players respected, but actually as a manager, he didn't quite have the tools for it.
But after a while, McClaren decided he's not going to be Ferguson's number 2 for his entire life. So just 2 years and 2 trophy-laden years after joining Manchester United, he took up his first full management job at Middlesbrough. The club had been up and down for a few years under Brian Robson, who no doubt at some point we've discussed as a potential England manager replacement for somebody or somebody else. I imagine maybe around Keegan's time. But they were kind of up and down with him, but escaped relegation the previous season before McClaren came in, thanks to Terry Venables coming in to steady the ship. What do you think of that?
A strange decision, isn't it, really? Robson had been there for quite a while at Middlesbrough and was just finally seen as, I don't think I'll be able to get them out of this one. So he calls up Venables, who he was his assistant at England when Venables was the England manager. So they clearly knew each other and they were friends. But it's a bit weird to be like, I'll get my old manager in to help me. Essentially on like a consulting role next to you. It's a really weird move.
Yeah, definitely. How did McClaren kind of do at Middlesbrough? Because I've got some memories of him doing quite well.
He was very good at Middlesbrough. He brought in like top players to Middlesbrough. It's kind of been a thing for a while. They had thrown money around under Brian Robson and in previous managers by bringing in players like Juninho, but it didn't stop there because you had guys Comendieta came in and Budwin Zenden as well, who Zenden had played well in the Premier League previously as well. And McClaren actually led them to their first ever trophy, the League Cup in 2004, beating Big Sam's Bolton Wanderers 2-1 in the final.
Shit, I don't remember. No way. The narrative is just insane.
It's everywhere. And just to cap that off as well, McClaren's captain was Gareth Southgate.
Oh my God. And Sir Alf Ramsey's just looking down, smiling and thinking,
the good boys.
one of these boys are going to look after this England team, either McClaren, Allardyce or Southgate. Don't know which one it's going to be, but yeah, they're going to really do a good job. And didn't they get to Europe? Well,
it didn't stop there at all for a successful Steve as he led them into Europe, and it's kind of Middlesbrough's greatest ever period. They reached their only European final, and Borough had found themselves 3-0 down on aggregate in the semi-final, but came back to beat Steaua Bucharest 4-3 in the game. Borough were absolutely knackered after that, and in the final came around and they lost 4-0 to UEFA Cup perverts Sevilla.
even back then. So what's the next step then, really, for McClaren? How does he get from sort of Borough to England?
Yeah, well, it's strange because he's only ever had one managerial job up to this point, which just again feels really, really strange that you have one job and essentially you then become the favourite for the England job. It'd be that club idea of that instead. But he knows the country.
Yeah, he knows he knows the country. He bloody loves London.
Absolutely, but you can just imagine like the smug, like folded arms of the big wigs of the FA as they decreed like the next manager had been here all along, and it was like a master plan along that way too.
Yeah. Aren't we incredibly smart? So, yeah. I mean, I'm interested, and I guess we probably don't know, but how did Sven get? What made him go from sort of Man United, Middlesbrough, England? What do you think he was kind of told then you could be, Sven's replacement at some point?
What, when he was appointed in Sven's coaching staff?
Yeah.
I think he'd still been at Man United at that point. So I think he was just still seen as a coach. He probably got eyes on Ferguson's job more than anybody's because he was already there under Sir Alex Ferguson. And then when it was kind of clear that he wasn't going to get that job, he went to go and become a coach himself somewhere else, like a first team manager. So he's still within the FA at that point.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's still the number 2 at this point, I think. So he goes to the World Cup with them as well.
Yeah.
But kind of by the time they're on the plane to the World Cup, he knows he's going to be the next England manager.
Because of the process that we've covered in detail. On McClaren's appointment, Brian Barwick said, "It's very exciting, isn't it? It's a new chapter and a new era. The England team has huge support and a huge following, and now it's a huge opportunity. His first challenge was to find a coffee machine. His second challenge was to find my office. And his third challenge, and the real challenge, is to build an England team that we can all be proud of. And I'm happy he will be able to do that. A significantly more difficult third challenge than his first 2.
I mean, I get Barwick's trying to be like nice and cute here, but it sounds like the head of the FA in like Mike Bassett, like cross with David really Brent or something. It's just like no way would the head of the FA try and make such an old bloke joke today. Like they just be like, we know we can't kind of say these things. Oh, the first thing you have to do is have to get me a coffee. Like,
it's just like he's
just his assistant or something. It's just fucking so stupid. And Barwick also commented on the long process as well. And he goes full earnings call on this. He goes, "It's been seen by many as a torturous process. I think we tried to appoint a senior person in a major industry. We hit the target early today. It started in early March and it ended up in May. We have had a job to do and it's taken us as long as it's taken. It may have been tedious from where you were. At times it's been tedious from where we are, but it's taken as long as it has." Just saying words, words, and he's angry with his own process that he's been the head of.
And but also I do just get this sense of I'm smarter than everyone else whenever he says anything like, "Oh, you might have thought it was tedious, but believe me, it was tedious when you were actually doing the work like we were. But we don't complain about it, do we? We just get the job done."
He's a bit like a failed politician, kind of just like, look, when you're out there writing your stories, I'm here at the coalface doing the real work. He's kind of like being like that. He's just he doesn't come off well in this period either. And he also says about Scolari, "I saw Filippo Scolari on 3 occasions. There were potential developments. He then declared he had no interest in the job. We never offered him the job." Now, Alan Kirbysh
offered him the job twice, two different lengths of contract.
I know, but apparently Alan Kirbysh said that there was 2 meetings. So you would go and you would have a tea and biscuits meeting with the FA and Barwick, which is more of like a getting to know you exercise. But within that as well, you would go to a second meeting where you would be more like formally interviewed. Now, if they've spoken to Scolari 3 times and we know it's a 2 process interview, then that third occasion is to offer him the job, surely.
Yeah, good deduction there. I can't disagree with anything that you've said. So Steve's, he's done well in his club career and he's been in the right places, but he's already got a bit of a cloud. A big Phil-shaped cloud hanging over his England appointment.
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish on that as well, Barwick said, Steve did 2 fantastic interviews. He was my first choice, the FA board's unanimous choice. My first choice was always Steve. That might be difficult for people to get their heads across. Like, again, so he's just like seemingly so smug. You idiots can't understand what I'm trying to do up here.
This
Even
is
though
the big picture.
David Dean on the board definitely wanted Scolari.
What did so McClaren on Scolari being first choice actually said, I don't see it as a case of first choice or second choice. I am the choice. And I sit here as the next England coach. I'm going to do it my own way. I'll be judged on what I do, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. Oh, strong words.
Strong words from a second man. just clearly not the favourite, but you know.
And I was absolutely shocked at who McClaren gets in as his second man when I saw it. I'd completely forgot it was Sir Terence Venables.
He is the number 2. I mean, it's happened again, hasn't he? How in this occasion is he? We've just covered him being the number 2 in 2 different jobs when he's still like a club manager around this point. He was Leeds manager for a period, like I think when they went down.
And he looks, on the picture that we have here, he looks like he wants to be England manager. He's got the tan. He's got the sort of, this is actually my job, boy. You know?
Yeah, out of the 2 of them, he definitely looks more England managery. Like he's got the 3-piece suit on. McClaren's just got the 2.
Yeah, but it's a new way. It's a new way of thinking. 2 pieces is the future, maybe.
Yeah.
Who else kind of filled that sort of coaching staff?
McClaren also had Steve Round as coach, who he knew from Derby and Middlesbrough. Round would later move to Everton under David Moyes, and then that cursed period at Manchester United, before currently actually finding himself at Arsenal under Mikel Arteta. So it's seen as like the new McClaren almost, of a really good young coach that he wanted to bring through. And he also had Ray Clements remained as the goalkeeping coach. And Bill Beswick was brought in as a sports psychologist, the poor sod.
Yeah, he's got generations of trauma to uncover there. And I think that's a good a place as any to leave it on, sort of generations of trauma, because we've got a lot of trauma to get through.
We've not even got to the football yet. He's not even picked his first team, and we've got to this point and just gone, that was exhausting.
It's an odyssey though, right? We've got to go into detail on all the little bits. And so far, where are we? Steve McClaren has been appointed after doing a good job at Middlesbrough, doing a good job at Man United, doing a good job under Sven. But is he really the man? You can join us next time to find out.
You may be a stranger, that's what time can do. Baby, you mean everything to me. Darling, there's no danger with all that we've been